For generations, the narrative of Japan has been one of a closed loop. The global perception is of a perfectly isolated nation, defined by a genetically homogeneous population and a single, unbroken imperial bloodline. But that traditional textbook story is being dismantled. Recent breakthroughs in genomic sequencing, oceanography, and archaeology are revealing a history far more complex than a simple vacuum. The evidence points toward a reality defined by extreme survival, hidden genetic hybrids, and a century and a half of history that was seemingly wiped from the written record. To understand the reality of the nation's development, we have to look past the comforting myths and investigate the multi-layered science of how it was actually constructed. The standard theory for the first human arrival relies on an Ice Age land bridge, the idea that the first inhabitants simply walked across from the mainland. Chart framing. This topographical map of the ocean floor shows massive ocean trenches between the mainland and the archipelago. Even when sea levels were at their lowest, these channels remained far too deep to ever dry up or freeze into a walkable path. In 2016, the National Museum of Nature and Science proved a much more difficult reality. They successfully replicated a 30,000-year-old journey, navigating the violent Kuroshio Current in canoes carved from single logs. This wasn't a casual migration. It required precise navigation, using only the stars and ocean swells as a form of biological radar to locate islands that were physically invisible over the horizon. The initial settlement of Japan was a highly coordinated, high-risk technological achievement, driven by the need to conquer the island's extreme geographic barriers. Biologically, the long-held assumption was that modern Japanese people were a dual mix of native Jomon hunter-gatherers and immigrant Yayoi farmers. But in 2024, researchers at the Riken Institute analyzed over 3,000 genomes and identified a massive, previously unrecognized third genetic layer. This data builds a new tripartite model, showing roughly 70% of the modern genetic signature comes from a third group, the Kofun. The remaining 30% is split evenly, with Yayoi and Jomon lineages each contributing about 15%. This ancient mix is still visible in modern biology through the YAP gene. Inherited from the Jomon lineage, this specific marker determines whether a person has wet or dry earwax today. The Japanese population is a biological hybrid, formed by successive, overlapping waves of migration that have been hidden in the DNA for centuries. This layering also defines the language. Japanese uses a subject-object-verb structure, and speakers often omit the subject entirely, relying on the listener to infer the meaning from the surrounding context. Linguists describe this as a millefeuille composite, where vocabulary from northern continental groups was slowly layered over an older southern island linguistic base. Because the verb, the action, comes at the very end of a Japanese sentence, a speaker can monitor a listener's facial expressions and reactions while they talk. This structural delay allows for subtle adjustments in meaning or intent before the final thought is even committed to speech. In a geographically closed space, the language evolved from a simple tool into a highly specialized mechanism for maintaining social harmony. This complex reality is often overshadowed by mythology. Traditional accounts describe Emperor Jimmu establishing the nation in 660 BC through a single divine conquest. Historical evidence suggests the Yamato state expanded through strategic assimilation. Rather than destroying local cultures, they adopted regional gods to build political legitimacy. However, there are signs of sudden, violent friction. Archaeologists have discovered hordes of sacred bronze bells buried hurriedly on remote mountainsides, suggesting a panicked effort to hide the remnants of a previous culture during a regime change. This potential erasure coincides with the blank 150 years. Starting in the late 3rd century, all written records regarding the island nation completely vanish from the historical record. When records resume in the 5th century, the nation has undergone a massive technological shift. The population suddenly possesses advanced iron weaponry, horse riding cultures, and the capacity to build these massive keyhole-shaped tombs. The transition to a unified state occurred during an era of rapid technological influx and hidden political upheaval, far removed from the pristine accounts found in mythology. The country's stability over 30 millennia stems from a specific capacity to absorb and adapt, rather than relying on strict isolation. This process functioned on every foundational level, absorbing foreign DNA, layering varied languages, and adopting rival religious beliefs into a unified political system. The emperor system itself survived by moving away from secular dictatorship and becoming a symbolic unifier that remained constant even as political regimes rose and fell. Japan's origins represent a multi-layered reflection of the world around it, crafted through 30,000 years of continuous adaptation.